Hey, what's happening? It's Andrew Grillos here. This evening I'm going to tie my Captain Crunch for you. It's a trout spey fly that I came up with a few years ago. Umpqua produced it for a few years. It just never quite caught on, unfortunately, so it's been discontinued. I still stay relatively well stocked with them because it is a fly that I really like fishing. They're super effective for me here in southwest Montana, and I'm sure they travel well elsewhere. It's kind of a mashup of a muddler, kind of got a little sculpin thing going on, a little intruder vibe. So it's pretty cool, kind of combining a number of different flies, different tying techniques to end up with the finished package here. With all my videos, what's more important to me is that you get to take away some new techniques that you can use on your own flies. Don't just follow step by step and duplicate something. Try to take away techniques that you can use for your own creations. And I feel like this fly is a good way to learn some new stuff, especially for a trout tire. So I hope you enjoy, I hope you learn some stuff. Thanks for checking this out. Alright, so we've got my Captain Crunch in the vise right there. This is a black and brown color combo, one that I like quite a bit. This evening I'm going to tie an olive and black one for you. Another, probably my favorite color combo, actually. So let me pop this guy out of the vise and put a hook in and we'll get after it. Alright, so this is tied on a shank with a stinger hook. So that's our shank right there. That's a great big mustad size too, a big long streamer hook. We're going to end up cutting the hook part off. It's just the shank to tie on. Most of my videos I use this ultra thread. This is ultra thread 140 in olive, one of my favorite sizes for a larger fly like this. As with a lot of my tying, I'm laying down a tight thread base for starters. That gives us a good foundation to wrap all of our other materials on. Good, so we'll head back to the end of the hook shank there. I like where we're at. Close to the barb. The stinger hook for this fly is an Owner SSW needle point in a size 4, and I've gone ahead and pre-rigged it right there. This is rigged on Maxima Chameleon 20 pound. That's kind of my go-to for stinger hooks like this. So I'm going to go ahead and secure this to the top of the hook shank as we're looking at it here. Make one kind of loose wrap, another one, a third, a little bit more snug, and at this point we can position the length of that and make sure everything's nice and straight. So I'm just going to kind of slide this hook back, get it kind of the distance that I'm going for behind the fly. I like that right there, I think. I'll go a little further actually, about 1.5 inches or so back there. I think that'll give us a nice overall size for the fly. That stinger hook is straight enough for me. So I'm going to go ahead and tightly wrap all the way back up to the eye of the hook and secure this Maxima Chameleon down. And I'm just making sure to keep it positioned relatively straight and right on top of the hook shank here as I work my way back up it. I don't want this to twist around. I want this to remain right on top of that hook shank. Good, so as we approach the eye of the hook here, I'm going to go ahead and take these two tag ends and poke them back through the eye and secure them one more time. And I'm going to cut these a little bit shorter at this point too. I'm going to go about halfway down the hook shank there, about like that. And by doubling this over, this just gives us basically zero chance that that stinger hook is going to pull off. So what I'm going to do here is take and slide this guy back, take a wrap right in front of it, another one, and there we go. Now we've got that folded. See how that's going to run on the underside of the hook shank? So again, we'll tightly secure that. I don't bother with super gluing this or going a third time or anything like that. Just that 50% down the hook shank folded over like I did there is more than sufficient. I've never had a hook like this pull out, whether it's on a trout, a steelhead, a great big king salmon in Alaska. This way is super strong. Alright, that looks great. So next step is to weight the hook shank here. This is .035 diameter lead wire. I'm actually going to lash 2 or 3 little lengths of this to the underside, and what that's going to do is act as a keel weight, and so that'll encourage the fly to ride with the hook point up. So I'm going to cut this. I want this to be about 3/4 the length of the hook shank. There's our first one, so you can see about like that. That looks pretty good. Just a couple wraps to secure it there, just like that. Cut another piece the same length, so I'm just going to lay this guy right next to it and then kind of eyeball lengthwise, take and cut that. And then I'm going to secure this piece of lead wire right next to that one. So before I fully bury it, I'll show you. You can see that there is just lashed right on the top of the hook shank. Try to make some nice secure wraps and hold it in place there. That looks pretty good. Next step here is that we're going to advance our thread all the way back to the end of the hook shank. Right to about there. We're going to dub a little ball of olive ice dub. That's going to act as a prop for the first little station in our intruder. That should be sufficient for the prop, I think. Good, so that's just a nice compact ball of dubbing right there. I'll advance my thread right in front of it. Next step here is going to be our rear hackle, kind of the rear station as they call it. And for this I'm going to use Grizzly Soft Hackle in olive. I've gone ahead and prepped this feather ahead of time. They kind of come pre-bagged, these hairline guys like that. So you kind of have to sort through it to find just the one you want. You kind of get a nice assortment of different sizes. So picked one out that I like here. A few wraps to secure it there. I'm going to go ahead and fold that little feather stem back. By folding it back and taking a few additional wraps, that just makes for a more durable fly. I'll go ahead and snip the tag end of that feather off. Now I'm going to go for hopefully 3 or 4 turns of hackle here right in front of this little ball of dubbing. This just adds a bit of profile to the rear portion of the fly. I went ahead and stripped half of the fibers off of this feather as well. That just gives me a little bit nicer, kind of conical shaped hackle here, as you can see. So that was perfect. I think that was 4.5 turns there. I like the amount of hackle you can see I've got going on. So a couple wraps to secure it. I'm going to fold that hackle feather back, that stem, and make 1 or 2 wraps around the base of it. Again, that'll just keep it from unraveling if something went wrong with the fly. Always keep durability in mind with your fly tying. Alrighty, my next step here, we're going to tie in a gold rib. This is some of this Vivas French tinsel in a size medium. I like how the gold looks against the black and olive fly. So I'm going to go ahead and secure this tinsel. I'm going to line it up right with where my lead wire is right there. That'll just help me create a little bit more uniform underbody. There's still a bit of a step there, but that at least helps us for the next step of the fly. And I want to secure this all the way down right up next to that hackle there, just like so. Looks good to me. Next step here is to wrap our body. This stuff's called Bill's Body Braid. It's a flat diamond braid kind of product. I really like using it for flies like this. It's got a good sparkle, it's nice and strong, and it wraps really nicely. So I'm just going to go ahead and capture kind of the last 1/4 of an inch or so of it and slide it down right until there. So there's just maybe like a 1/16 of an inch of fibers sticking out still. Nice tight wraps all the way back to that hackle there. And then I'm going to build up a bit of a transition zone right here so I have less of a step. Just a little bit smoother shape to the fly. That looks better to me. Now I'm going to advance my thread up to the front here. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and wrap our bill's body braid forward now. And I'm going to take advantage of tying on a rotary vise here. I tie on this Dynaking Excalibur, and whenever it's advantageous, I typically will rotate the hook shank like I'm doing now. It just makes it a little bit easier to keep an eye on what you're doing. You can create a little bit more uniform body. You can wrap things a little bit more evenly. You don't want to see little gaps in what you're wrapping here. You want every consecutive wrap to be touching the one before it. Great. So there's our black underbody there. That's that bill's body braid like I was saying. I'm going to unwind the wraps that I just put into the fly like I did there. And then I'm going to go ahead and tie off that body braid with a few nice tight wraps. Again, a durability thing here that I always tend to do. There's 3 wraps on it now, which might be sufficient, but I've got room, so I'm going to go ahead and pull this guy back and take just a couple more wraps around the base of it before I cut it. And that makes a little tougher fly. So there we've got our underbody on there. It's nice and even. Next step here is to wrap the rib over the top of that. I'd like to get about 6 turns, maybe 5. We'll see how this falls. Try to get them spaced nice and evenly. That's just kind of an aesthetic thing. You want them to look nice. That last one kind of stepped off. See how there's a little step there in that underbody? Let me reposition that guy. That looks better. Good. Got 4 tight wraps holding the rib in there at the moment. That should be more than sufficient. I'm just going to tie down that tag end. Next step here is to create another prop for the front station of the fly. So I'm going to go ahead and dub another ball with this olive ice dub. I'm going to make this one just a little bit larger than the front one. I would like this to hold the profile of the materials that are going to lean against it. I want it to hold them out more, right? So the rear station is going to be a little bit smaller of a collar, and this is going to be a little bit larger collar. And this is pretty much taken straight from tying intruders for winter steelhead, great big intruder flies. I just kind of have scaled that technique down a bit to turn this into a little smaller trout spey fly. Like I said in my intro as well, this is a killer steelhead fly as well. If you just change it up, do some kind of summer steelhead colors like black and red, black and purple, whatever your confidence colors are. I really like fishing black and red for summer steelhead. Alright, so we've got our dubbing rope created there. Now I'm going to go ahead and wrap this all right where that bill's body braid ended and create a nice ball to prop some materials against here. Good, maybe make a few more turns. Let's throw a little bit more dubbing on there. That looks good. Wrap those in, just get a nice round ball of dubbing. There we go. That looks good. My next step here is going to be to tie in my next collar. And this is an olive guinea feather that I also have gone ahead and prepped ahead of time. When you typically get these guys out of the package, you get that great big feather there. So it helps if you just go ahead and dress it a little bit. And again, I'm just going to use 1/2 of the fibers here, so I went ahead and stripped those. Let's go ahead and tie this guy in. A little long there. Great. Now I'm going to wrap this right next to that ball of dubbing. by prepping the feather in advance like I did there too, I've got enough stem to hang on to. Sometimes hackle pliers do come in handy as well, but for this one, I think I'm doing just fine. Great. So I've got that, captured that stem there. Now I'm just going to make a couple wraps around the feather stem to secure it in there. I'm going to fold everything back and make 2 wraps right over the base of all those materials. Just help secure them. Cut that feather stem out. So you can see this is sort of starting to take that intruder shape that we're going for. Our next step here is to tie in our speckled flashabou. This is black and gold speckled flashabou. I really like the speckled stuff for this fly. I think it gives it a nice look in the water. It kind of breaks it up so it's not just super sparkly like a spoon. It's kind of just, again, maybe it's just an aesthetic thing. I like it, but it looks great to me. So I tied this in the center, about 6 to 8 strands, and then I'm going to take the materials in the front here and fold them back and tie everything facing backwards. I'm going to just slide that up on the top of the hook a little better. There we go. And a few wraps around the base of those materials will secure them. You never want to tie a material like that right by the end. It'll just pull right out. And so I'm going to go ahead and trim these so they line up with my rear hook. I don't want them to be longer than that rear hook. I want them to be able to swim freely without getting wrapped around it. So there we go. Things are taking shape. That gives this fly a great flash in the water. I think it gets a lot of attention. Alright, so we've got our flash tied in there right on top of the fly. Got it all trimmed up. Next step here is we're going to tie in that wing. The wing that I like to use for this is grizzly dyed olive. This is a feather from a whiting bugger pack, actually. They're a surprisingly good value as far as fly tying materials go. You can get a lot of good feathers out of these little bugger packs. So I'm going to tie the first one in on my side of the fly. I want this guy to be oriented pretty much vertically. If there's a slight curve to it, I think that's okay, as long as the other side kind of matches it. So, get this guy lined up on my side of the fly. Take a couple softer wraps, check it. I like how everything's looking there. I like the angle, not too twisted. So that one's good. Flip it over and show you. So I've got that tied in on my side there. Now I'm going to match it on the other side. Just get it positioned right where I want it. Hold it in place with my left hand. Try to secure it with a couple softer wraps. There's 3. See what we've got there. Not too bad. Not too bad. Yeah, I like that. That looks good. So I'm going to go ahead and pinch everything, oriented how I want. Make a few additional wraps here. Just kind of secure it in. Looks good. Nothing twisted on me. Go ahead and wrap a few additional wraps right in front of it there. Just build up a bit of a taper for the next step. That looks good. I like everything we've got going on there. Final step to this fly, we're going to spin a deer hair head on there. And for this fly, I like to do a mix. I'm doing 50% olive deer hair and 50% black deer hair. So I've gone ahead and cut some and put it in my hair stacker already. Let's give it a little stack, make sure the tips are nice and even. Looks pretty good to me. Right there, see how nice and straight that is? I'm going to go ahead and pinch all of those, take them out of the stacker, get my thread about where I want it, right in the center of that head we've created. Alright, and the length on this guy, I want to be about half the length of that underbody that you can see, that black underbody. So I want the tips of these guys to go back to about there. So I'm going to go ahead and switch hands that are holding my deer hair now. I'm going to come up and make a couple soft wraps around it just to kind of secure everything. And now I want this to spin, so I'm going to encourage it to distribute evenly around the hook there. You can see how I'm kind of pushing it down. I haven't really applied much tension to my thread yet. Everything's nice and even now. I like what I've got going there. So I'm going to apply more tension and encourage everything to spin and flare. See how that all stands out there? Got that pretty nicely distributed. I'm real happy with that. And I really like the look of this olive and black deer hair in there together too. I think it looks really nice. Alright, so we've got our deer hair head there. Got a few wraps that are securing it. It spun real nicely, it flared. So this is my super high-tech deer hair packing tool. This is a Sharpie that I took apart and kind of cut just a little bit. And I don't really want to have a great big buoyant, like dry fly deer hair head. This isn't the largest clump of deer hair. It's maybe about as big around as a pencil. So that's it. I'm just doing one clump with this fly. So I'm going to go ahead and work this guy in here, find the eye of the hook, and just sort of push all those fibers out of the way, kind of like I'm doing. And then you can get your fingers in front of him there. Just grasp everything. Go ahead and spin it. That might be easier from this angle. There we go. So now I've got those fibers out of the way. You can see I'm holding them there. I'm just going to work my thread in front of all of that. Get just a couple good turns up here, 2 or 3. Great. And then I'm just going to whip finish right where I'm at there. Looks good. So we'll get our whip finish tool lined up here. I'm going to pull all that deer hair out of the way. Right there, you can see. And I'm just going to go ahead and drop in 1, 2, 3, 4 good turns there. Nice tight whip finish. I don't even mind that I captured that one deer hair fiber in there, because that's still a good tight whip. Looks good. I'm happy with everything. I'm going to cut my thread. Now all we've got to do is give this fly a haircut, and then we're just about done. So with my muddler heads, I like to go for a pretty steep angle on the cut. I don't really want a long sloping head. I want the fly to be pretty blunt. So I'm going to go ahead and make a pretty steeply angled cut here. And don't cut too much right away, because it's not going to grow back. So it's better to start with a smaller cut, take less material, and then clean it up as you go. So you can see that muddler head kind of starts to take shape. Kind of has a sculpin feel to it as well. Just go ahead and keep trimming it down to size. Get those fibers out of there. Looks pretty close to me. Fluff it just a bit, make sure there's no stray fibers that need to get cut. That looks good. So that's almost done now. The last step is to cut off that main hook that we actually did all the tying on. I don't really like fishing 2 hook flies all that often. I think 1 is more than sufficient for this. Alright, so to cut that hook off, let's just go ahead and grab our needle nose pliers here. I'm going to pop this out of the vise. I'm going to go ahead and carefully get the materials out of the way. With my needle nose, try to get in there and cut off that main hook. And don't cut it so close that you cut your maxima loop that you tied in. That went well. You can see that guy's gone now. And that's it. That is how you tie my Captain Crunch fly. This guy, there you go. Works really well for trout. It's a great trout swing fly. Change it up to some steelhead colors. It's a great summer steelhead fly in the Pacific Northwest. I'm sure it would do great for the Great Lakes steelhead fishermen as well. Hope you enjoyed it. More importantly, I hope you learned some new techniques that you can take to your own creations. Thanks for watching.